Hey guys, Jose from Games Can Be Beautiful here, and I'll be showing you guys today how to do level composition or world composition in Unreal Engine 4. Basically, when you want to use world composition is when you're going to make a big open world game like Legend of Zelda or The Witcher, where you're going to be using the landscape tool a lot to sort of shape how the world is going to look. This is preferable over level streaming when uh, the method in my previous video when it is a bigger map as opposed to smaller maps. When it's a smaller map, you probably want to use level composition. When the map is just made of static meshes that you made yourself and not so much landscapes, you probably want to use the original level streaming. But I'll show you guys now how to do world composition. So first of all, what you want to do is create a regular level that'll work as your persistent world, and then you go to world settings, and then you enable world composition. Now, you want to make sure this persistent level doesn't have any other sub-levels underneath, otherwise it won't let you, and it will ask you to remove them. So once you make sure that you don't have any sub-levels here, you click enable world composition, and now it is set to go. So now you'll notice that you have this little thing next to here that opened up. So when you click on it, it opens up this map, but there's nothing in there. Well, I'll show you guys how to add something. So now, if you want to add something here, what you'll do is levels, create new, and you want to make sure it's in the same folder as the persistent level. Because what the world composition does is that it looks for everything within the same folder. So make sure you're not disorganized and put stuff on this in a folder with other levels, otherwise it might include them as well. So I'm just going to call this new world 1, right? And now you'll notice that it's here, so I'll load it, I'll make it current, and now what we're going to do is we're going to do a landscape tool, and you're going to create a new landscape. You'll want to plan out what size will be the shapes of your landscape, the overall resolution, all of this. Does involve a little bit of math, but if you look at the world composition page on the UE4, their documentation, they'll give you some basic math about what size will give you what, and you'll be able to determine yourself which size is preferable for your world composition. So for now, we're just gonna create this, create, and then you'll notice that a little green box appeared, and this is our landscape tool. So now you'll notice if I go to sculpt and I start sculpting and I save, well, it might take a while, but eventually you will notice these bumps appearing here on this quote-unquote mini-map. So here would be a level, right? This would be one set of mountains, right? Creating some mountains. But what if you wanted to connect this to another landscape, for example? What if there was I don't know, something over here that led into here? Well, right now there's this really weird seam, and if you were to try to make a separate landscape normally without world composition, and then you try to do a landscape thing, each landscape would deform individually. So that means this one that would not deform with the one next to it, which I'll add right now. So it appears that this one is to the right. So if you notice this little arrow here, it tells you what direction you're looking. So this little slope leads to the right. So what you do to add a new landscape is you go to right click, add adjacent landscape level, and then you'll see these little arrows tell you what direction. So just click here, and you name it New World 2, whatever you want, and it'll spawn it. Now it's a little weird right now, and so what you can do is you can just drag it and snap it next to it. And then you've noticed after I did this that the slopes and stuff from the first landscape I made start appearing here. So if you wanted to make a mini map, this would be a pretty good way. As you keep adding stuff, you'll notice more of the stuff comes appearing here. And now if you notice, oh man, there's this hole here. I don't want that. It looks very weird. But since I'm in landscape composition mode, if I go back to sculpt and I do this, you'll notice they blended in together now, well, other than this part. So this is the power of the landscape composition tool. you might want to not do that first, so just smooth it out so the seam isn't as visible. But you'll notice that there's virtually no seam now thanks to the landscape composition, allowing you to basically blend the landscapes. So what you could do is, if you had a team of several people, one person can be working on this region. If you can plan out the size of the region, and then one person could be working on a landscape region over here per se that won't be affecting these two. And since this one, when you created the new landscape level, it created a second world, you'll notice, and that it's in your persistent level, right? So it's loaded. So normally when you're doing source control, you don't want to have two people working on the same level. You want each working on individual levels, otherwise there'll be conflicts when you try to merge them together into one project. So what this allows you to do is that it allows you to still work on the big landscape levels individually, and not have in general, it lets you plan out what you want for your whole game. Now, if you notice when I zoom out, there's this orange box. This is currently the max limit of Unreal Engine 4 that you could do for using open world composition. I don't believe there's any game in existence so far that has gone past this. I believe it's 20 kilometers. So you probably don't have to worry about reaching the limit. And if you are, you might have some problems with the scales in your levels. You probably won't reach past the limit if you just plan out where everything in your level is going to be preemptively. So while this does help you join everything together, you do want to do preemptive planning about the different zones in your game and how the general look of each. Okay? Now, you realize this up here shows uncategorized. So let me just make quickly another whatever new world 3, and I'm just drag it here. Now you realize this is uncategorized. Well, what does this mean? Well, in the world composition tool, there are layers that define streaming distance, and what streaming distance basically means is that when you're at a certain distance, it will unload the level for you. So if you remember the level streaming I had set up in the previous video where you define the boxes that loaded in and out certain things, well, the thing with the landscape tool is with the landscape and the world composition is that it uses a similar but yet different system where it's a little bit more automatic, but you get to define the numbers and the distance. So let me make some mountains over there quickly for the sake of the example. Not with the smooth tool. Mountains. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to create a new layer, call it far or short distance, and this number here defines how far away in Unreal Engine units before, how far away in Unreal Engine units before it deloads the level. So let's put it right now at 20,000. Create. And then what you do to add it to that layer is that you just right click on it and then assign to layer, shorten. Okay? Now, if anything is not categorized, it'll generally show here. But if I made another one, for example, just call it whatever. This one is 50,000, and then I right click, add to layer, whatever, and then I click on shorten. It'll only show me the landscapes on that shortened layer. Now let me show you assign to layer, uncategorized. So let me just assign everything back to uncategorized. Alright. So now you'll notice that this disappeared, but when I click play, I'll be in it, right? It'll still be loaded technically, but you'll notice that once I reach this boundary, if we look back, let me just move this for you guys so you can see a little bit. So I'm going to be moving back, and you'll notice once I reach a certain distance, it'll deload. And that's because I made the streaming distance 20,000, and once I reach this point, it pops out because I am beyond that distance. Now that looks a little weird, right? Because suddenly a whole bunch of mountains just despawning. That doesn't look right. And that's sort of the art of level planning and world composition, is that you're trying to hide these pop in and pop outs. So how about we go shorten and instead assign it to whatever, which is the longer one. Second dot, probably shouldn't have called it whatever, but um, so now you'll notice that since the whatever layer had a longer streaming distance, if I walk farther away, it's not unloading anymore, right? And this one loaded because I came within the distance, but you'll notice I was able to walk farther away from the first landscape. If you're looking at the world composition little graph there, you'll notice that stuff is loading and unloading, right? And that's generally how you do streaming distance and world composition, right? So another thing you can do is to trick the players, or to at least not make the pop in pop out as obvious, is that you can go, if you go to persistent, you make it current world composition, and then you go and get atmospheric fog. Then you add it, plop it somewhere in the world, and once you've pulled it in, what you want to do is set this ground offset to as high as you can. Now watch what happens with the mountains when I increase this. You'll notice the fog came in and out. Right? And the other thing you want to do is that you want to change the start distance, so this determines how close to you before it starts showing. So the lower this number is, the closer it's going to appear, the fog, right? So let's put something at like, let's put it at like 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, no, that's too much. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So let's put it at like 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's better. 10,000, right? And it'll start appearing once you're within 10,000 units, right, of it. And if you want to make the fog far away appear thicker, you increase this fog multiplier. So right now it's not even visible at 10. Let's put it 5. So you just play around with these numbers until you get one that seems like it works well. So this one you can still sort of see the outline of it, but it is, if it popped in and out, you probably wouldn't notice it much. So once you do that, just click play, right? And if you look at the world composition, right? Click play. Okay. So you'll notice that I'll keep walking back. And you can sort of see in the background, right? If I start walking back, as you can see in the world composition, it just unloaded. It just loaded, unloaded, loaded. Now, those mountains over there were very, on the one on the right, you could tell that that they weren't popping in incorrectly. But the ones very back there, it's not even noticeable. It's almost not noticeable that it's popping in, right? So that's the trick to hiding this pop out with a streaming distance. That you plan ahead of what things are going to be in the way to prevent the player from seeing this pop in, pop out. Maybe it's the height they're at. Maybe there's a mountain in front of this pop out or pop in. Maybe there's fog. There's a lot of things that'll help you to hide the pop in, pop out from the world streaming. And overall, the more you plan out your level and all these multipliers and numbers, the better the experience will be in your open world game. Now, the next video I'll be talking about level of distance quickly using world composition. So that means instead of just popping in, popping out, and loading, on top of that, there'll be level of distances. That means at a certain distance, it'll start reducing in the number of polygons. Now, this is, you might want to be careful how you use this, because it might become very obvious if you reduce by a certain amount. But I'll talk to you guys about that one in the next video. So, see you next time.